Okay, now we're starting into week 6, and this is the first on George Williams, 6A. Hello and welcome back to the Agon Sports Ministry video series. I'm Dr. Greg Linville. And whether you're taking this for seminary credit, or as an auditing student, or for certificate, please hand out your hard copy PowerPoint notes on George Williams, the founder of the movement, and this would be the YMCA movement. And we're continuing on in our study of those that helped start the muscular Christianity movement, or era, if you will. And the first we talked about last time was Thomas Arnold, headmaster at Rugby School. And now today we continue on with Sir George Williams. He was actually knighted by the Queen. And on the first page of your reference sheet there, or the PowerPoint notes, you're going to see that you have a list of books about Williams. And again, for those of you taking this for credit and you have quad mates, there's 4 of you that are reading books and making reports to one another. Maybe Williams is the guy, and here's some possibilities for you. Let's start again by talking about George's early life, because there's a lot in his early life that comes into relevance in terms of him forming his models, and then because how he created his models and some of the things that he did, then we hope that you'll be able to create your own models in the 21st century. He was born in Somerset, England. This would be in the area of Wales. And he was the youngest of 8 sons, and it was said that he got his cheery and winning manner from his mother. And he got his hard driving, indomitable will, and unquenchable enthusiasm from his father. Well, his father, his family were farmers, but George didn't get that gene. And he was a terrible farmer, and in fact, the last day of his farming came when he put the horse, the wagon, and the load of hay in the ditch. And his older brothers came to their father and said, "Dad, this just isn't working. We can't make any money trying to overcome the damage that he's doing." And so his dad reluctantly said yes, pulled George out of school at the age of 13, and then took him off to be apprenticed to a draper in Bridgewater. Now, draper, think textile mill, if you will. Now you can imagine how this traumatized George as a young teen, leaving the comfort and the warmth of a very, very strong family and being dropped off literally on the doorstep of someone he had never known. Now, he was amongst other apprentices at that point, and they were all working for this draper, this textile mill owner. And one of the things that changed for George was that the man that he was apprenticed to required all of the workers there, all the apprentices, to go to church. It was a requirement to attend church. So this was a beginning, and then what he began to notice was that the men that he was working with, they were much different, and he actually said he was influenced more by what they did not say than what they actually did say. Meaning that their language was not profane, their language was wholesome and encouraging. And this was some of the things that George began to notice, that things were a little different here. Church attendance, people that weren't as profane and vulgar. And while being required to go to the Zion Congregational Church, he was then influenced by a very, very unknown preacher. In fact, if it had not been for George Williams, we probably never would have heard of Evan James. It was on a winter's cold night in a cold stone chapel that in the year of 1837 that Pastor Evan James preached a salvation message, and George responded. In fact, I'm going to read a quote to you that will help you understand this about James and about George. Evan James, the pastor, and George Williams, the young convert. Quote, George Williams is the brightest gem in the unfading crown of a simple country minister of the gospel who, in his common round of work, without taking special thought or making special appeal, was the means of leading him to the master, meaning leading George Williams to the master. Let's think and pause there for just a moment, if you will, about your models of 21st century sports ministry. I think there's a lot to be learned here, and that the culture, the language, the ethos of the sports ministry in which you create is often going to communicate more than anything you actually do say. That's one of the models that we can take. And for those of you that are taking this course through a seminary and you're taking it as an elective and you're going to become a preacher, a pulpit preacher leading a church in some way, never overlook the fact that in calling people to Christ, it's possible that your ministry would never be known except for who you might bring to Christ. And that bringing the message of Christ in your preaching is so important. And those of you that are being in this course and you're training to be sports ministers, let it never go beyond you. Let this model not escape you. The importance of getting your people into church where there's good evangelistic preaching being done. These things go hand in hand. This is a model for us in the 21st century. Well, let's continue a little bit about some of the influences in the early part of Williams's life. Two men, Biney and Finney. Finney, the man who was known as one of the great evangelists of that day, and Finney, who was the man who became president of Oberlin College. What Williams got from Finney was the importance of prayer on behalf of non-believers, an Andrew list, the integration of this prayer into evangelism. And in fact, you could not be a YMCA member in the early years if you did not have an Andrew list. Who are you trying to bring to Christ like Andrew brought his brother to Christ? How is that for a model for the 21st century? Everybody on your staff should have this list. Williams got it from Finney. Can we get it from Williams? The second thing that he got from Finney was the integration of faith and everyday life and business. In fact, he said the great business is evangelism. And again, this integration. What he got from Biney was to win others by love. You see, Finney encouraged soul winning, but he had a very confrontational style. And this was not sustainable for long. His motivation was right, it was strong, but it was through Biney that Williams was learning how to think about character development and to do the evangelism through personal relationships. Now we'll come back to that a little bit later, but I'll end with this little story to give you the example. One day on the streets of Oberlin, Charles Finney was walking along and he saw a woman of ill repute walking the streets. And he walked up to her and said, "You are a daughter of Satan." Now, that'd go real far today, wouldn't it? The woman, without skipping a beat, responded, "Hello, Father. I haven't seen you for a while." Well, that gives you an example of the drive and determination of Finney, but it was Binding's influence of winning people over with love that also influenced Williams. Now, when we come back next time, we'll pick it up from there, and we'll see how Williams began to take those concepts and others and parlayed them into a model of the mid-1800s that we can apply now in the early 2000s. Dr. Greg Linville here for the Agon Institute of Sports Ministry. Talk to you next time. Thanks for joining.